Good morning and a warm welcome to one and all. Mozilla Campus Club CRC is back with another session on prototype validation, converting a prototype into a startup. Friends, corporations and businesses seeking to innovate or create products and services often find themselves in an unpleasant situation where they wasted a large amount of time, money, and resources designing an idea or product that ultimately fails to meet the expectations and serve its proper purpose. Here's where prototype validations plays a crucial role. No matter what product or service you're working on, it's always important to validate your design decision before you ship them to users. To enlighten us on this topic, we have with us our eminent speaker, Dr. Shilpa, recognized as a leading startup specialist, mentor with Startup India, author, researcher, and education reformist, which with PhD in business management and bachelor in science, her experience of 2 decades has been a blend of academics and corporate experience. She has deep expertise in facilitating strategic thinking among teams, provoking valuable insights on the future disruption trends, industry paradigms, and prospects. She is the head for entrepreneurship development startup innovation at Neville Wadia Institute of Management Studies and Research. We are indeed privileged to have you here with us. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aidan. So, you guys want me to start immediately? Just let me know. Swati Mohan.
Oh, yes, ma'am, you can start. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think it was Shoiden who introduced me. And I have been working in the space of startup for the last almost, if I be precise, maybe for a couple of 13 to 14 years now. And 2002 was something where I initiated this, and I've been working in that space for quite some time. Now, having said this at the onset, let me take this opportunity to thank Mozilla Campus Club, especially the Institute Innovation Council, to think about topics like this, because it is the need of the hour. Besides being that we as Indians being the third largest ecosystem enablers in the space of startups. So yes, we have been, excuse me, just give me a minute. Yeah, I'm sorry. My voice has been croaking sometime. I have been doing a lot of sessions, and now that in Pune we've started completely offline, so we have been visiting, and this Women's Day program coming across next week, so we've been visiting a lot of places. Having said this, at the onset, let me take this opportunity to thank Mozilla College of Engineering, especially the Mozilla Campus Club. And I think it is called as the CRCE, where you have your own Institute Innovation Council, and you do a lot of activities in the space of incubation, entrepreneurship, and startups. Well, from the thought process that I have come and with my expertise in this area, I have been in this space. Basically, I think it's very important for students to understand and realize that startups and venturing into something which is completely unknown through your product is not a journey which is going to be bed of roses. There are going to be instances where there would be stuff which will challenge your thought process of why did you think a certain way and why did you feel that this particular idea that you have come up with makes a lot of sense. So what happens is, students, you need to understand, I'm sure all the faculty members here also will endorse to what I'm saying, is that the entire journey of entrepreneurship is filled with certain extremely important game changer stages. And one of the very important game changer stages, especially when you come in the field of entrepreneurship, is the fact that when you move from ideation to experimentation to actual validation and hitting the markets. So this entire experimentation as a philosophy is ingrained in something which we call as prototype validation. Now I'll be talking a little more about it Of course, this is a very huge topic. I will try my best to give it justice in the next 1 hour 45 minutes, and last 10 minutes possibly we can keep for question answers. But what I would like to tell you all here is that the journey is just begun, especially when you're talking about a stage where we're talking about prototype validation. I come to the stage for you to to tell you all that when we're discussing topics of this nature, especially when we're talking about prototype and MVP and POC, I believe that there is a basic understanding that goes of whether you have crossed the ideation stage, whether you have crossed the valley of death, whether you have crossed certain statistical experimental methods where you feel that, yes, my idea makes sense and I would want to take it ahead. Right. So I'm coming to you all with that space. So I would want you all to understand this from that space, that we have gone one step ahead from ideation, where you must have had sessions on ideation, where you must have had sessions on what it takes to scale up an idea to bring it to the prototype, right? So I'm not going to be covering that area. Having said this, what I would be covering is the entire validation process. So what is the stages? How do you really go about doing it? How do we really go and talk to the VCs about where you can take it forward? So I have been a mentor with a lot of institutions. Of course, the flagship Government of India program, which is Make in India. I have been working with the ministry for almost a good 4 to 6 years now. In fact, precisely the initial 1 year, we were trying to figure out how do we coordinate. And now, being in this space, we connect. And now I have been a mentor with a lot of academic institutions and incubation centers. So my contact details are available with your center. So you all can ping me on LinkedIn. I'm there, available on LinkedIn, and also on my personal mobile number and my email ID, which I will be sharing. You all can get in touch with me. Okay, so let us begin, guys. Are you guys ready? And can we start the session? Okay, now see, we belong to the generation of the space of interaction. We cannot do a monologue. So if you expect me to do a monologue for the next 40 minutes, it's going to be a little difficult. Let me tell you, I'm going to make sure that I would want students to interact, and if not in detail, but yes, I would want you all to, have a certain pointers and touch points with each one of you. So we're not going to have a monologue. I'm not going to start with a monologue and just telling you what the whole world thinks and about prototype, what the world thinks about startups and stuff like that. So can we have it interactive, guys? Yes, no, don't know. You do not want a session at 11 o'clock. We close it off immediately, or we would want you all to be a part of the entire learning curve of prototype validation. Can we go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, Atavaris Varsi. Okay, yes, I can see some yeses coming across. See, guys, see, students, we have to be interactive. We cannot do a monologue. It's a very interesting topic. So unless you do not talk, unless you don't get involved, it's going to be a boring anyway session. So we don't want that to happen. There's a lot of webinar fatigue which has come, because of which most of the student community is bored with somebody who just comes and speaks and goes. I don't want to be coming from that league. So let's begin, and let's start talking about prototype, and let's talking about what it makes, why is it that certain ideas click, and why is it that certain ideas don't click? Is it a journey of joining the dots, and the dots are at certain very important stages in the entire process? So what are these dots that stand for? Okay, so have you guys made me the host so that I could share my PPT?
And you can share the PPT. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to share the PPT immediately. Just let me know if you can see the slide. Can you guys see the slide? Everybody. I want everybody to be participative.
Oh, yes, ma'am, it's visible.
It's visible? Okay. So these are my credentials. I'm available on this number. I'm available on this email ID. And I should have also put the link of LinkedIn, but I'm available on LinkedIn. You can put in as Dr. Shilpa. You'll get me there. So let's start talking. Let's start interacting of why is it that you need to think about prototype and why the whole world is talking about prototype. So what is the agenda for the next 40 minutes that we guys are going to be together is this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about a little bit about the first stage where we talk about what is a prototype and what it takes to be a prototype. So is there a method and what are the different types of methods? Is there a empathy mapping mechanism where you convert your viable product to an enterprise? So why are everybody talking about come on, make a prototype. Prototype अगर नहीं बनता है तो आपका प्रोडक्ट नहीं बनता है. तो अगर आप प्रोडक्ट नहीं बनाओगे तो आप enterprise कैसे खड़ा करोगे? So when you talk about these thought processes, it has been observed that the maximum startups that come are from STEM. So what do you mean by STEM? You have, can you guys tell me what is STEM? STEM. What is STEM? Yeah, tell me, what is STEM? Guys, come on. I want everybody to be interactive. It's a lovely Sunday. I know we're trying to talk on a Sunday, but having said that, we would want you still to be a part of the next 40 minutes that we guys are going to be together. What is STEM? Because let me tell you guys that STEM is something which it has been observed that the maximum startups are coming from that fraternity. So it is science, technology, engineering, and management or mathematics. So it has been observed that when we're talking about, prototypes and we're talking about entrepreneurship, we're talking about startups, the world is revolving around STEM. People from the STEM fraternity, because they feel that the people coming from engineering, people coming from science have a bent of mind which will give it a demonstrative evidence for what they feel will add value to the world per se. And that value is going to be a product. But journey is not going to be just starting the product. You are going to create something which is going to make sense. So we are looking at a blueprint of an extension of your thoughts. And what is this blueprint? Is nothing which is called as a prototype. So let's try to understand, what do you mean by a prototype? Yes, what do you mean by a prototype, guys? You've heard so much of world talking about it. From a scientific point of view, what do you mean by a prototype? How many people will agree when I say that it's a model? How many people will say it's a process? How many people will say it is a type? How many people will say it's a functional construction method, ma'am, जहाँ पे evidence तैयार करने की कोशिश की गई है पर तैयार हुई नहीं है क्योंकि ये फाइनल प्रोडक्ट नहीं है. So what is a prototype? क्या लगता है आप लोगों को? Like a design for a construction of an airplane. आप डायरेक्टली प्लेन तो नहीं बना सकते, आपको एक मॉडल बनाना पड़ेगा जहां पे आप डिफाइन करोगे कि भाई मेरा प्लेन इस तरीके से दिखेगा, मेरा प्लेन इस तरीके के टेम्परेचर में चलेगा, मेरा प्लेन इतने हाइट पे चलेगा, मेरा प्लेन का डायमेंशंस ये रहेगा. सो दैट अर्ली स्टेज ऑफ टेस्टिंग व्हाट यू थॉट कुड बी एन आइडिया. Wright brothers ने जब they started the plane, they just started make a plane and start flying in the air, right? They had to create something which was an early stage with loose wires, rough edges, all of it put together. And it is an extension of an original idea. But it worked, right? It worked. And so you are sitting in planes right now after maybe a good 150, 200 years. And hence, prototype has been given so much importance, where you need to have a concept, an original model, and this early stage model ko jo aap again and again test karte ho, aap validate karte ho, checkpoints create karte ho. Okay, check, 10 checks done, validated, okay, create it and introduce it, launch it, commercialize it. मैनेजमेंट की लैंग्वेज में इस तरीके के प्रोसेस को आइटरेटिव बोलते हैं. In the engineering setup, you would refine it, come back, check, test it, go back, test it, go back. Now, this is functionally called as iterative. Iterative matlab kya? You keep coming back for feedback. You keep coming back for what you think makes sense. Loose wires to nahi chal sakte, right? You can't have a plane where the loose wires are hanging in the air. No, you cannot work like that. You'll have to create a finished model. But a finished model will not come unless you have done something which you think will work. And let me tell you, the entire concept of prototype, the history of prototype came with software guys. Because they felt that they cannot have something which you could immediately get into model and apply it. There were companies like Microsoft, IBM, Honeywell. They created extremely cheap, efficient methods to start testing ideas. Because they started solving individual problems. Understand this. तो फर्स्ट आपका तैयार हुआ जिसको हम पेपर प्रोटोटाइप बोलते हैं. सो 1980s में पेपर प्रोटोटाइप्स बहुत होते थे कि आपका आइडिया है. स्कूल्स में जैसे हम जब रहते थे तो व्हाट डिड यू टेल इन स्कूल, व्हाट डिड यू रियलाइज इन स्कूल? यू रियलाइज दैट ओके ऐसा कुछ बना सकते, चलिए क्यों ना, why don't we just go ahead and create a prototype? And hence it is said that prototype became the mother of invention. Because if you look at it from a human species, we have always been inventing, finding better methods of living our life. So humans have basically been prototyping for centuries. So the realization of every idea has involved prototyping in the journey of becoming a reality. So it is important to prototype, but फुल स्केल फंक्शनल फॉर्म कब आएगा? जब आप एक डिजाइन तैयार करोगे. सो जो आपका अर्ली सैंपल रहेगा, अर्ली मॉडल रहेगा, अर्ली रिलीज रहेगा टू टेस्ट अ कॉन्सेप्ट. एंड वेयर आर यू गोइंग टू टेस्ट दिस? कौन से कॉन्टेक्स्ट में टेस्ट करोगे? आप इसको डिजाइन में टेस्ट कर सकते हो, आप इसको इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स में टेस्ट कर सकते हो, सॉफ्टवेयर प्रोग्रामिंग में टेस्ट कर सकते हो, प्रोडक्ट डेवलपमेंट में टेस्ट कर सकते हो. बिकॉज एट द एंड you are going to use this method to evaluate a new thought process. And there are going to be system analysts, there are going to be users who are going to provide specifications for real-time working systems. तो एक प्रोटोटाइप अगर बंदे ने किसी ने बनाया तो आप बोलोगे इतना स्लो तो चल नहीं सकता, आपको थोड़ा सा फास्ट करना पड़ेगा. यूजर इज नॉट यूज्ड टू a time frame. Let me tell you, there is like in the fintech companies, you open a website, it has been given T+43 seconds by Reserve Bank of India for the encryption data for Aadhaar enabled payment systems. तो आप अगर कोई भी चीज खरीदते हो and you connect it on the net to purchase something, government says if the transfer of funds can happen in 45 seconds, it's okay. Otherwise, typically you'll get a message which says that downtime, run server going slow, try some other method. Have you heard about this, students? Have you heard about this? Okay, guys, am I making sense? I cannot have a monologue where people don't interact. Am I making sense? Am I able to tell you all some concept which you think is a functional form of an idea? Okay, good. Thank you so much, Omkar. What about the others? I don't want the webinar fatigue coming into my class. We just have 40 minutes and I want to value add to those 40 minutes where you guys, I want you guys to think you are the future. Okay, so you have a few students who says, yes, ma'am, it makes sense because it's an extended functional form. So if I talk about utility where prototype can be actually utilized, which do you think could it be? Which sectors could it be? Tell me fast. कहाँ पे आप use कर सकते हो prototypes को? I just gave an example. Tell me quickly. You can start your cameras. I would want to know you all personally. Doesn't matter. Sunday morning, we are not in a great shape, ma'am. Nothing like that. Yes, on the cameras, off the cameras, through an SMS. Tell me fast. Which product lines will possibly use a prototype maximum? Would you agree when I say automobiles? Would you agree when I say design? Would you agree if I say electronics? Even if I say software programming? बनाना पड़ेगा ना, एक रफ मॉडल बनाना पड़ेगा जहां पे उस मॉडल को आप टेस्ट करोगे, उस मॉडल पे आप देखोगे कि क्या चल रहा है क्या नहीं चल रहा है. Somebody message is coming across. Very nice. Students are interacting. Very good. No, I'm not talking about minimal viable product. I'm talking about a stage जहां पे आप ideation से next stage पे पहुंचे हो और उस next stage को आप POC कहते हो, proof of concept. So proof of concept कब बनता है? Proof of concept आपका तब बनता है जब आपका एक मॉडल का एक बेसिक प्रोटोटाइप बनता है जहां पे आप टेस्ट करते हो कि मैंने जो कॉन्सेप्ट सोची थी. So after you've got validated of your prototype, you go to the next stage, which we call it as MVP. Are you all with me, everybody? So full scale functional form कब होगा? फुल स्केल फंक्शनल फॉर्म तब होगा जब आप एक जर्नी करोगे एक स्टेज से दूसरे स्टेज तक. तो कौन सा जर्नी है? कॉन्सेप्ट तो ठीक है, मैंने लोगों से बात कर ली, सब बोलते हैं इस एरिया में मैम कुछ भी नहीं है. ग्रेट, फैंटास्टिक. नाउ यू हैव टू गो टू द नेक्स्ट स्टेज. You have to start creating it and start talking to people that okay, देखो मैं अपने आप को इतने लोगों से अपने आप को सबको बता रहा था, मेरे पास ये आइडिया है, देखो मैंने ये प्रोग्रामिंग किया है और मेरे पास ये ऐप मैंने बनाया है, डाउनलोड करो, देखो क्या इस ऐप में प्रॉब्लम है, स्लो है, फास्ट है, क्या यूजर इंटरफेस है, किस तरीके का डिजाइन है. So when you talk about things like this, it is at that level that starts making sense. So your prototype starts making sense. Now let's continue with what I was telling. And hence, when you have done with the ideation process, you go to the next stage of creating a prototype, and there you are creating a basic model. And this basic model, this process of materialization, this process of creating prototype, this process of workflow, जब तक आप उसको validate नहीं करोगे, this is not going to make sense. And hence it is said that it is a stage between formalization and evaluation. This stage जब तक आप cover नहीं करते हो, आपके ऐप का, आपके स्टार्टअप का, आपके आइडिया का कोई भी सेंस नहीं बनने वाला है. Like if I give you a little history before the current geography, like I always say, earlier inventors जो होते थे, they would create working models to help them explore and experiment. Like, you must have heard this very, very famous painter, Leonardo da Vinci. How many people have heard about him? Yes, no, don't know. Bataiye, chalo, fast. How many people have heard about this guy, Leonardo da Vinci? He's very, very popular. As a painter. But how many knew that he had inventions created? And he would paint his ideas, which have now become a reality, like airplanes, parachute, tanks, and robots.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, he would actually paint it. And there are still proofs of the blueprints that he has created, because he was famous for being an inventor, but he became famous for his art. Talking a little more about the Wright brothers. You think they would have directly made an airplane? No, it's a process of trial and error, trying to create the first airplane, and the definition was through a prototype. They were not working on a scale model. They were working on a real thing, and they would compare. And if you compare this to the earlier slide that I was telling about a software program testing, where developers simply build a version of the software and then they test it. तो जो आपने सुने होंगे आपके फ्रेंड्स या ब्रदर्स सिस्टर्स कि वो सॉफ्टवेयर टेस्टिंग चल रही है, किस चीज की टेस्टिंग चल रही है कि जो डेवलपर्स ने एक वर्जन बनाया है सॉफ्टवेयर का, दे हैव टू गो इटरेटिव, कीप कमिंग बैक विद द फीडबैक, एंड दे हैव टू, दिस इज कॉल्ड एज द ब्लीडिंग एज ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी. मतलब क्या? They have to keep coming back with the testing and experimenting record unless there are no bugs and prototyping tools are created down the line. In fact, in my slides, I have also tried to, give you all a link where you can actually create a prototype. So having said this, if prototype is a bleeding edge of technology, there are tools which are going to help it. So you would have to do research, you'll have to do a sample, you'll have to do a visual representation of the product, you'll have to test it and test it functionally, okay? And when you want to really test it functionally, there is going to be a cost that's going to incur. So you'll have to tell your IIC, Institute Innovation Council, or your incubation center for the specification of the concept driven. And because you know that your area and your idea is so unique, you want to do it very fast. So you have very little time. So this trial and error method will help you augment. Because the truth of the matter is that we have been following this iterative process. Matlab, we have been following this feedback process of trial and error. And in the end, what comes back is the literal version of a prototype. What do you see on the slide here? Guys, what do you see on the slide here? Can anybody just...
A design.
Very good. Very, very important. Do you see some one triangle, one square, one circle? दिख रहा है आपको लेफ्ट साइड पे, राइट साइड पे?
Yes, ma'am.
तो उससे आपको क्या पता चल रहा है? मेरे दिमाग में एक आइडिया आई. You four friends would sit and they would say that मेरे दिमाग में एक आइडिया आई है. This is how Just Dial got created. This is how Zomato got created. This is how Swiggy got created. This is how delivery got created. So there were this bunch of people who sat and thought, hypotheticated in the brain, where the story goes, interestingly, of the very, very popular Mark Zuckerberg. When he was creating Facebook, he was, he always stayed in a dorm. And he was bullied, of course, being a part of the dorm. He was bullied. He went through a process. So the first version that he created of Facebook was something which is called as FaceMash. So he had some way, when you hypothecate of what is there in your mind, that becomes a blueprint, a framework. But when you start building it, you create something which you can touch, you can hold, you can see, you can interact. Because जब आप टच करोगे, सी करोगे, इंटरैक्ट करोगे, तभी तो आप फीडबैक देख पाओगे. मेरे दिमाग में क्या चल रहा है, आप क्या फीडबैक दोगे? सेशन के बाद ही तो फीडबैक दोगे कि मुझे अच्छा लगा, मैम ने क्या बोला, इट रियली मेड सेंस. So there has to be an element of an interaction and a touch point, and blueprints cannot have that. But prototype can be having that. And the next stage being very important, जिसको हम कहते हैं validation. सिर्फ एक चीज बना के आप नहीं छोड़ सकते हो, उसको आगे लेके जाने का आपका जिम्मा है, because it's your idea. Because you want to see how it's going to work in practice. You need to augment and help achieve the things which otherwise you wouldn't have done, right? अगर entrepreneurs नहीं रहते थे तो दुनिया आगे बढ़ती ही नहीं थी. You know something, student, it's called as the 4 factors of production. If any country wants to become rich, The first thing is man, second thing is money, third thing is land. And you need the fourth guy, which is called as entrepreneurship, which will bring the initial three resources together and take it forward. And that is the reason startup entrepreneurship को हर civilization ने बहुत ही ज़्यादा importance दे के रखा है. Unless you do not invent, unless you don't commercialize, unless you don't ideate, Americans are not where they are because they spent 200 years only to ideate and create a world through which they can add value. So the truth of the matter is that you need to augment what you have. And it's a part of the process. So up to now, humans would possibly prototype manually with scale. So if I would share something like, 1 second. Before I talk to you all about this, if I share this, can you see the slide? Students, can you see the slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Look at the rapidness that is there in the invention. When you manually prototype, there could be rough edges, there could be possibly methods. See the progression that has happened in the full working the working mechanisms. Because up till now, humans were prototyping manually with scale, fully working models. बना रहे थे ना, invention कर रहे थे. But with advent of computers, what happened was they started thinking कि ठीक है, computer से try तो करते हैं. The first history में prototype testing का जो एक validation का जो method incorporate किया है was in the 1960s. So there was this professor called as Herbert Walker. He was the first guy who said, why don't we use computers to explore the control of factory floor assembly lines? He was the first guy who did a mathematical theory and an algorithm which formed the basis of 3D applications that we use right now. Until now, 3D application is done. 3D software is used. 3D methods are used to design most of the things mechanical, from anything that you see like toy cars here to skyscrapers. तो आपने ये वर्ड्स यूज किए होंगे ना, कंप्यूटर एडेड डिजाइन, कैड, नाम तो सुना ही होगा. स्टूडेंट्स, आर यू देयर?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So you must have heard these words like computer aided design, because these designs gives us the ability to prototype our ideas in the virtual world. And that is when computers started coming. Earlier, we used to create a model, but now computers help us create this model. And it was this guy, Herbert Walker, in 1960s, created an algorithm. Until now, we use the same algorithm of 3D applications. Of course, there has been a lot of amendment and more clarity, but he has been credited where he said कि कितनी बार मॉडल्स बनाते रहोगे, कंप्यूटर प्रोग्रामिंग पे ट्राई करते हैं अगर ये चलेगा कि नहीं चलेगा. Later on, of course, हर्बर्ट लॉकेर का आइडियाज को और आगे लेके गए, and they started applying it in wide ranges. So जो आप कहते हो ना कि मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्रोसेस को, जैसे मैंने इस स्लाइड पे बताया है कि प्रोग्रेस किया गया. So there was a rapid evolution in the way that a prototype revolutionized the mechanism of actual product. So if you ask a 10th standard guy or a 6th standard, अभी तो खैर स्कूल के बच्चे बनाते हैं, if you see this, and if you were given a project कि भाई ऐसा कोई हाईलाइट बनाओ जहां पे हैंडीकैप को पता चलेगा कि यहाँ पे they can go inside and this place is only for handicaps to take rest and to park park themselves. Suppose, assumption, huh? So that is where the whole industry is 10th standard boy, and you see the movement of my cursor, a 6th standard student would possibly make it. But when you ask the same engineering graduate or maybe a 10th and a 12th right now, will create a box connected to the machine and create it further for a metal handicapped sign with an LED light, an engineer creating it and further improving it, companies creating this. So see the way that we have progressed. Now, isko prototype validation ki language mein fidelity bola jata hai. It is the fidelity that has increased and improved. Like, if I give you a little example, 1970s computers were used by IT professionals. Only IT professionals would use computers, 1970s. But what happened? By the time you came to the 80s and the 90s, Apple, Microsoft, these guys, what did they do? They partnered with IBM and they started making computers which was affordable for people like you and me. And that is where an untrained user came and he said, okay, yaar, ऐसा कुछ machine है जो मैं डालता हूँ, उसमें information डालता हूँ, बहुत जल्दी calculation हो जाती है Excel पे. मैं कोई information डालता हूँ तो मैं बहुत जल्दी connect हो पाता हूँ किसी और company से, किसी और से. So something which was unmanageably complex led to something which became easier, like an example which we call it as air traffic. Software industry has made programs for things like air traffic, and because of this, such complex has become so easy. And hence you say that prototype has helped us make our lives better. And this success has just not come immediately, because this success has happened because prototype validation has happened at every stage. It's an iterative prototyping and empirical testing. And hence you say, you have an idea, you keep coming back to it. So prototype ke bhi types hote hain. Like I said in the second, when we started, there are types. One, जिसको हम कहते हैं भाई बना दिया, immediately use हो गया. Throw away prototype. A practical implementation of the system. एंड इस प्रोटोटाइप को एक कंपनी खरीद लेती है और प्रोडक्ट बना लेती है. एक दूसरा होता है जो खुद स्टार्टअप बनाता है, जिसको एवोल्यूशनरी प्रोटोटाइपिंग बोलते हैं, जहां पे आइडिया इज देयर, एक्सटेंशन टू थ्रो अवे प्रोटोटाइप. ही लर्न्स दैट व्हाट चेंजेस कैन बी डन एंड इट्स एवोल्यूशनरी एंड देन फाइनल प्रोडक्ट कम्स इनटू एग्जिस्टेंस. सो द यूजेबिलिटी टेस्टिंग which could be done through software development, many processes have been developed to understand how people are interacting with the softwares. And now, of course, with artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep neural networks, इस तरीके का मिस्टर सिस्टम्स आ गया है कि कंप्यूटर को बोला गया कि ह्यूमंस के जैसे सोचो. आप सोचो, मशीन से अभी कैसे सोचे, फीलिंग्स कैसे लेके आए. तो ह्यूमंस बोलते हैं नहीं, मैं आपको बताता हूँ फीलिंग्स कैसे आती है. What are the trigger points? So look at the way that we are evolutionizing our mechanisms. Hence, we say that prototypes are a means to the end to solve the individual problems. Hence, what do? You start requiring it. You start defining your idea. You find out the requirement. You make a quick design around it. You build a prototype around it. You check it out with the users. You refine your prototype and you come back creating your product. And of course, with internet coming into existence, it's become very easy, guys. You have software technologies and tools. We can easily create a prototype. Like, let me give you an example. There is a company, if you put Macromedia Flash, Has anybody used Macromedia Flash? आपको प्रोग्रामिंग करने की भी जरूरत नहीं है. Has anybody used Macromedia Flash? Nobody. Okay, no problem. It's a very interesting tool where you can give a design experience to any of the product that you create. You can make a note of it. I'm just writing it in your chat box. Macromedia Flash. You know, it helps you create a rapid prototype for what you think for your product. Okay, I have last 10 minutes left. Nevertheless, we will see where we can arrive. So if you look at how the internet has brought and the rise in the software tools available, like if you use Macromedia Flash, you can build a highly interactive application through its browser plugin. आप ये try करके देखना. Something, any linear animation आप try कर सकते हो, कुछ भी try कर सकते हो. Fully featured application आप तैयार कर सकते हो. So you pick any industry, create how you can add a story for what you can take to the next level of the future, what more you can add, what more you can do. You remove the assumptions and that's where you prototype. So, you know, the first stage would possibly be, especially when you talk about validation, you have to have a problem which is a real-time problem. Then you build a model around it. You try it out in the virtual environment. And when you try it out in the virtual environment, one second. You create a design, you develop it, you get it tested, you resolve the bugs, and then you're ready to release it in the market. So when you are talking about validating that particular prototype, last 5-10 minutes, students, before we close down for the session. So users understand the concept, they want to use it, does it add value, concept works, fantastic. So this, see the movement of my cursor, validation and iteration is the prototype validation, and there are a lot of, you know, methods, depending on the complexity, depending on the requirements. Of course, we couldn't just finish the topic in 45 minutes, but I just hope I have given justice to the topic. So depending on the technical complexity, depending on the requirements, depending on how are you going to create the user base, not very complex with respect to design as well. So you have to check whether what you thought will make sense. So you need to check the after effects. You need to check hence, you know, this rapid prototyping and validation became so important. Because you need to keep coming back to what you think would make sense. Students, are you guys with me?
Yes, ma'am. We are listening. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good. I'm so happy that students are responding. So when you are actually validating and checking a concept, you need to keep coming back. What problem does your idea actually solve? So if you are, suppose, assuming you are on the the lower curve. प्रोडक्ट मेरा इतना कॉम्प्लेक्स नहीं है, टेक्निकली भी इतना मुझे नहीं, सर्विस बेस्ड है, ब्लूप्रिंट बनाया, मैं इस तरीके से कांटेक्ट करने वाला हूँ कस्टमर्स को. सो डिजाइन रिक्वायरमेंट्स भी इतनी नहीं है, तो आप वैल्यू प्रोपोजिशन पे कीप चेकिंग विद पीपल दैट मेरा ये आइडिया चलेगा नहीं चलेगा. लेट मी टेल, पीपल हैव टू गिव मी फीडबैक. सो कॉन्सेप्ट वैलिडेशन के, प्रोटोटाइप वैलिडेशन के ये क्वेश्चंस होते हैं जिसके बेसिस पे ये टाइप्स होती है वैलिडेशन की. Like a very interesting question which is typically asked in product validation, especially prototype validation, is how many times this idea has failed? क्या यूजर को पता चल रहा है आप क्या बेचने की कोशिश कर रहे हो? क्या यूजर को ये प्रॉब्लम भी पता है कि वो एक प्रॉब्लम है? So prototype testing questions have to be answered when you are validating the product. How do the users actually feel for the product? So are the interfaces created in such a way that the storyboard is trying to give you a prototype? Are you doing a user-driven prototype? Depending on your budget, depending on the time, depending how much you are willing to involve people, you need to have testers who are going to test your products. जो हम language में guinea pigs बोलते हैं ना, normal language में, you need to have these guys because you need to use the product. Because in digitally, you need to solicit feedback. You need to test with the right people. Very, very important. You need to ask the right questions to the users. And you have to be very open with taking feedback so that the more feedback you get, the more learning will happen, and the more learning will happen. I guess. Can you guys hear me?
Ma'am, your voice is echoing, but we can hear you.
I don't know why though.
Ma'am, you have joined from 2 accounts.
Now? Now is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Actually, Actually, the lights have gone off in Pune. So just give me a minute. I'll just open the windows. Oops, there's too much of light. Anyways. Okay, any questions, students? Please feel comfortable to ask questions. It's very important to what we have done as a topic. And yes, and do give me a feedback. Well, we tried our level best to talk about the things in the area of prototype validation and creation of prototype. If I had some more time, we could have spoken exactly some more things on this. However, we had to just do it in 1 hour. So I hope I have made justice to the topic. So please feel comfortable to post in your feedbacks and do let me know whether you like the session or not. Yes, do let me know whether you like the session or not.
It was great. We got to learn a lot of new things, especially the example and the concept of we have to make multiple prototypes and that only one of it mostly gets selected.
Yeah, in fact, let me tell you, Pratham, just to add to what Pratham just mentioned. See, you have to create multiple avenues how you could connect to the user. Okay, so assuming that you all have created your product, you need to get in touch with the users, and the users have to give you a feedback. And when the users would possibly give you a feedback, that is when you're going to rework. That is when you're going to rework on what you thought will add value to the customer, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Very nice. Very nice. I really, I have a very deep sense of appreciation to the engineer fraternity because, when we talk about such concepts, the engineers respond so beautifully. I have been doing sessions for the last 2.5 years, almost 3 to 4 sessions per week. We decide on different topics. So what I've observed is, it's very important you guys don't follow the herd mentality, students, especially the engineers. You all have an amazing analytical bent of mind. Only thing is you need to monetize, and that will only come through projects. You have to get in touch with the industry. You have to find out what's there in the industry. How is it that you're going to add value as engineers there? And that is all you need to do. And you have a great way forward. All the best to all the 40 students who were attending, but students have been, students, you got exams also, I was told tomorrow. So, right. So I think we can sign off for the day, but you all have been a great audience. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure to be here with the Mozilla Campus Club.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, so much. I would just request all the participants to please fill the feedback form, and we'll just end with a word of thanks. Pratham?
Yeah.
Yes. Good afternoon. That was indeed a very informative and an enlightening session. We are sure everyone had a fun and interactive learning experience and that everyone is well acquainted with prototype validation and the necessary steps to convert it into a successful startup. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your valuable knowledge and experience with us aspiring students. We look forward to hosting many more enlightening sessions with you in the future. Thank you for joining and taking part in this wonderful session, everyone. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Yeah, before we close, thank you so much. I would want I wanted to take a photograph with the group. So can we have a photograph done? Have you guys taken it? The organizing team? I would want the photographs after the end of the session.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
All right. So then in that case, I think we can sign off for the day. Thank you so much. Any other further questions? Thank you, Pratham. Thank you, the entire team of Mozilla, to have organized this wonderful morning brunch kind of a session where we've spoken about concepts in the field of entrepreneurship. All the best for your examination tomorrow. Signing off for the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone, for participating. You all can leave the meet.